Want inclusion to work in your organization? Then you want Tracy Brown, author of Breaking the Barrier of Bias, to help you achieve clarity, apply courage, and build strong cross-cultural connections. Will you please welcome Tracy Brown.
Diversity in the workplace is nothing new. I bet every one of you have had jobs where you worked with people who are very different from yourself. And your parents, if they worked outside of the home, also worked in companies where there were lots of people hired from different identity groups. So diversity in itself is nothing new. Your relatives, your friends, everyone you know has worked in environments where there's lots of diversity. So what is new? What's new is that the impact of the increasing diversity in the workplace throughout the United States of America has created new challenges for each one of us as we try to learn to communicate with each other and as we try to get projects done with all these different people who think differently and have different practices and different experiences. And that's what makes it difficult. Some of you would say that you're quite proud of what you have achieved in the workplace, working with folks who are very different from yourself. You've already been an advocate for diversity. You've already interacted with people who are very different from yourself, and you've had a lot of success. Others of you might tell me, well, Tracy, you know, I don't have a lot of friends who are vastly different from me. But I don't have any problem at all working with lots of different kinds of people. And a few of you might even say to me, well, Tracy, I am diversity. I know what it's like to be included and excluded. I know what it's like to be ignored. I know what it's like to be discounted. And I would never do that to another person. So since we've all been in environments where there is a lot of diversity, let's start there. Let's start there and let's build on that. In fact, since we've all been in environments where there's lots of diversity, I bet you can answer a few questions for me. And I know you thought you were going to ask me questions, but nah, I get to ask you questions first. So in order to do this, I need a couple of volunteers. I need a couple of volunteers who are willing to read statements. And if you're willing to volunteer, I want you to come up and grab, maybe 3 of those questions that are over there. And I'll be asking you to read those. Now, while you're checking them out for a minute, let me tell the rest of you what we're going to do. Your colleagues over here will read a question, or actually it's a statement. We're not going to use questions. I'm going to have them read statements. And after they read the statement, your task is to say whether you believe that statement to be true or false. That's really easy. You can do that, right? Okay, let me give you a test first. Check the questions out, make sure you're fine with them, and let me give you the rest of you a test. Okay, let's see. Here's the statement. This is one of the best audiences that Tracy Brown has ever had the privilege to speak to. True or false? True. Okay, you're right. And now what I want you to keep that same level of energy, that same level of enthusiasm, and that same level of confidence as you respond to the statements that are being read by our volunteers. Statement number 1.
Thanks to changing attitudes, men and women now behave in virtually the same way at work.
Is that true or false?
False.
Ooh, with confidence, absolutely. Even though we have more women in the workplace than ever before, the behavior hasn't automatically become the same. There are still some factors that are affected by gender as well as all the other dimensions of diversity. You did great on that one. Let's see how you do on number 2.
Baby boomers are the largest age group in the workforce.
True or false?
True.
True, and a little tiny couple of voices saying false. In this case, that is true. Baby boomers make up both the largest percentage in the general population and also in the workforce. You're doing great. Let's see what happens on number 3.
The legal case that resulted in automatic citizenship for anyone born in the United States involved a Chinese American.
True or false? Uh-oh, where'd my confidence go? No truths, a couple of falses, and a whole lot of you going, I do not have a clue. What is this about? Well, this is something that I expected you to hesitate on. And the answer happens to be true. And in 1895, there was a young Chinese American who went to China and came back. He went to China for a visit. And he came back and was denied entry into the United States. He and his family protested that, and it resulted in the change of the laws in 1898, where after that point, if you were born in America, if you were born in the United States, you automatically became a citizen. Before that point, it was not automatic. Great, great, you're doing good. Question number 4, statement number 4.
13 corporations scored 100% in the 2002 survey conducted by the Human Rights Campaign on fair practices and policies that affect employees, consumers, and investors who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transsexual.
That was a really long statement. I'm going to ask her to read it one more time so you can think about it.
13 corporations scored 100% in the 2002 survey conducted by the Human Rights Campaign on fair practices and policies that affect employees, consumers, and investors who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transsexual.
True or false? Oh, just guess. Just guess. It happens to be true, and this is a recent survey that was just done. And one of the things that I want you to really think about and notice is that the survey did not just ask corporations about how they treat employees, but it also expressed concern and probed a little bit into policies and practices that affect customers who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender, and investors. And that is a real change in the trends as we face different dimensions of diversity in the workplace. Next statement, please.
The New Freedom Initiative is a federal program started in 2001 to focus on improving literacy and employment skills for naturalized citizens.
True or false? See, your friend here.
I got the answer.
It's false. Although there is a New Freedom Initiative and it was started in 2001, its focus is on creating new freedom for people who have disabilities by making sure they have employment skills and employment opportunities throughout the nation. And number 6.
The 500 most commonly used words in the English language have more than 14,000 meanings.
True or false? Absolutely, it's true. No wonder we have so much trouble communicating with each other. We use words all the time, and we don't understand that we wrote that email or we left that voice message and the person didn't kind of get it. 5,000 words, 14,000 meanings. It is really a challenge. And so what I want to help you with today is to think about how you use those words and other things to communicate more effectively in an environment where there's lots of diversity. But before I do that, one of the things that I want to do is to say thank you to the volunteers. And you'll notice there are buttons on those cards. Now, one of those buttons of your choice is for you. The other 2 are for you to give to someone in the audience before the end of the day. And then I ask you to please also show appreciation for our volunteers, please. Oh, come on. As I travel the country, a lot of times people ask me, Tracy, how did you prepare to do this work? What is it that motivates you and actually gave you the skills to talk about diversity and how to make inclusion work in organizations? And sometimes, a little jokingly, I respond that in many ways, I've been in training to do this since I was 2 years old. And my family, which you might guess is a black family, my family moved into a predominantly white community. We were the second African-American family to do so. So from a very young age, I had to learn what it takes to build cross-cultural bridges, to be able to communicate with people in a way that may be different from what was comfortable for me, but helped us to be effective with each other. That continued all through school and all through my professional career as well. And sometimes I wasn't different by race. Sometimes I was different by education or by age or by gender. But in every situation, every stage of my life, it seems I've been dropped into these great opportunities to explore more about who I am and also interact with people who are very different. And if there's one experience that I think really shaped me, I'd go back to 4th grade. And the experience I had in 4th grade was, one that changed my life. In a lot of ways, I felt like I'm this little 4th grader and I'm carrying the whole weight of the world right here on my shoulders. And some of you, maybe not at 4th grade, but at certain times in your life, maybe you have felt that burden too. The reason I felt the burden was because I was in the first group of students who were bused from a black school to a white school in St. Louis, Missouri, to help desegregate the schools. Boy, it was hard. But as painful as it was, I have to admit, I learned some of the most valuable lessons. I learned to ignore the voices of people who really don't know me and who really aren't going to give me a chance, and to continue to do what I know is best for me. I learned an awful lot about forgiveness and how important it is to forgive people who exclude you or who don't understand much about you. At the same time, I learned how important it was for me, and I hope that you also will do this. It was important for me to learn about other people and create opportunities for us to get to know each other, to get to understand each other, and to create wonderful outcomes. It was those lessons that I learned in 4th grade that fully laid the foundation and prepared me for the work that I do today. It's those lessons in the 4th grade that I learned that took me from the beginning of the school year, where people called us names, to the end of the school year, where we, a group of 4th grade kids, were hugging and smiling in the class picture. It is those lessons that I share with you and with audiences like you all over the country. So much of getting involved in diversity really is about learning what's going on with other groups. I did not ask you those questions or read those statements and have you think about the answers to test your knowledge. Not really. My primary motivation was to get you to think about how broad and how wide and how deep is your knowledge and your understanding about groups other than your own. And the reason that's important is because when we have understanding and when we have knowledge, it results in us developing greater comfort. Why is comfort important? Well, comfort's important in the workplace because then when someone comes up with a new idea or a new suggestion or a way to respond to customers or even suggesting new customers we haven't thought of before, if we have some comfort level interacting with people who are very different from ourselves, we're not so intimidated. We're less likely to get defensive, and we're more open to creating an environment where everyone can be productive and where we can respond better to all of our customers' needs and expectations. So the real test was not, did you know the answer to each one of those, but did you stop and think about your own commitment to diversity? Now, some of you are quite comfortable with diversity. You talk about diversity or you talk about being okay with lots of different people, but do you take it to the next step? Do you take it to that next step or that next level where you are interacting with people or where you are learning about all aspects of diversity and then applying that learning to the conversations you have and the people you interact with every day? What happens for most of us is that we don't apply it every day. We just put it on the back burner until there's a big problem, and that's one of the reasons why diversity gets equated with discrimination, or diversity gets equated with deficiency, instead of looking at how we can use our diversity to make inclusion work in our organizations and our associations all over the country. Because diversity is not new, obviously, it has existed for a long time. We have to be aware that what is new is the challenges that we face as a result of the diversity. So we can no longer afford to make hiring decisions based on who we're comfortable with, our personal comfort level with people from different groups. And we can no longer make assumptions about people or what they are capable of doing in our organizations. And we've got to be really, really careful about excluding people who might bring value to the organizations. So, in order to do that, what do you have to do? You have to stop talking about diversity and you have to start demonstrating your commitment. It has to show up in the things that you do and the things that you say over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you have to be aware of some of the quick ways that we jump to conclusions, some of the assumptions that we make, and some of the things that happen to us when we least expect it, because we're not paying attention. So our assumptions start to control us instead of us controlling our assumptions. Wait a minute. Yeah, let me try something. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I want you to turn to people close to you, just 2 or 3 people at a time. And in the next 30 seconds, I want you to tell me everything you know about the item I'm holding in my hand. Or I want you to tell each other and share everything you know about the item I'm holding in my hand. 30 seconds begin. Let's go. Start. Time's up. Okay, you talk to each other, now talk to me. Tell me everything you know about the item I'm holding in my hand. Talk to me, talk to me. Has a stem on it. It's yellow, it's a fruit. It has potassium. It makes great banana pudding.
It's a little light.
Comes from Panama. It's almost a foot long. What haven't I heard? It's high in potassium. It's healthy, it tastes good. Wait a minute. Okay, wait. Let me check something out. I asked you to do a task, right? What was the task? The task was to tell me everything you know about this item, share with your neighbor, and then tell me everything you know about this item. Great. And you had a time limit. You had to work really fast. Is that kind of like what happens at work? Somebody gives you something to do, you got to get it done, you go after it, right? Because that's exactly what you did just now. You went after it. You wanted to finish the task, you wanted to do a good job, and you wanted to come up with as long a list as you possibly could. However, I asked you to tell me what you know about the item I was holding. And for the most part, what you told me instead were your stereotypes about that item or your assumptions about that item. You don't really know that it's healthy. You didn't do a chemical analysis on it. You don't know whether it's sweet because you didn't really taste it. You don't know if this particular one was grown or born in Panama. And some of the things you told me were true, but many of them weren't. Now, poor little innocent banana over here didn't do anything to you. Just minding its own business, enjoying its day. And what did you do? You attributed some things that you might have experienced, read, heard about, or been told about in another situation, in many other situations, to that one. Now, please don't get defensive. I know you never, ever do that with people. Okay, maybe every now and then. But that's just how quick our brain works. Now, I would like to remind you that you have the opportunity to take control of that. And there are 2 things that will help you do that. Number 1, let me give you a little gift. This little gift is a saying that I use, and I find it helps me tremendously to remember that I cannot stop at thinking about and talking about diversity, but I also must include attention to diversity in all that I do. So, here's the saying. If you're over here in this third of the audience, what I want you to do is I want you to repeat after me these words. You can't talk your way. You can't talk your way in the center out of what you behave yourself into. Behave yourself into. Okay, let's try it again. You can't talk your way out of what you behave yourself into. Fabulous. One more time, all the way through, very smoothly. You can't talk your way out of what you behave yourself into. Isn't that true? You can't talk your way out of what you've said or what you've done. People judge you based on your actions. So please be careful and try not to treat people the way that you treated this poor little banana over here, innocent as it is. And I'll give you one more tip that will help you. As you might guess, I travel a lot as a speaker, author, consultant, and trainer. So on a recent trip, I was leaving Phoenix, returning to Dallas. And as these things go, you walk in a lot of lines, right? When you're in the airport, and you wait in line, and then you get the opportunity to go to the jetway. And then you do this circle thing, and you go down, and then you turn, and then you come back. And then finally, you get to the plane. So you gather up your stuff, and you start getting ready to go, get on the plane, because the aisles are kind of small, kind of narrow. You can't just roll your bags down. And as you're going down, invariably, somebody in first class is putting something in the overhead. So you have to stop for a minute, because your bag is heavy. And you stop for a second, 10 seconds max, and then you continue. Well, this particular day, that's what happened to me. I was on the flight. I stopped for less than 10 seconds in first class. And just as I finally get to my row, I hear myself thinking, I just hate her. I look around like, there is no one within 3 feet of me. No one has spoken to me. No one has stepped on my foot. No one has hit me. No one has done anything. And I hear myself say, I just hate her. Wow, I'm caught off guard because, you know, think about it. I'm Miss Diversity Consultant. I speak on diversity. I tell people, suspend judgment, don't make up stories, etc., etc. And here I am thinking, I just hate her. And immediately I realize I am referring to a woman in first class who was putting her briefcase in the overhead and made me stop for 10 seconds. Whoa. Have you ever found yourself thinking something about someone and saying, wait, they didn't do anything to justify that? That's what happened to me that day. But what's different for me than from some of you is that because I do this work, I'm more tuned in to the assumptions I might make and the way that my biases may come up. I don't know why I said that about the woman, but I knew I had a process that would help me figure that out, or at least help me choose to change it. And I'm going to share that process with you. It's 3 very quick, easy steps. So as I'm on the plane, I realized, okay, go to the process. 3 steps. Step 1, what is it? Step 1 is that you capture everything that you saw. What were your visual cues and everything that happened? Any cues, not judging, not figuring out why it affected you the way it did, but just what was going on. So I got out my paper and I opened my notebook and I just started writing. And that's the key. You just write everything. You don't think about it. So I'm writing. What did I see? What was she? And it was things like she was about 5 foot 8 inches tall. She weighed about 120 pounds. Her hair, blonde. Shoulder length, perfect cut. And she was gorgeous, yes. And her makeup, flawless, just perfect. And she was wearing a designer label suit, and I happened to know how much it cost because I had seen it about 3 weeks earlier and had, really wanted it, but I couldn't convince myself that I could afford it. And so her shoes were impeccable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just capturing all of these things about her. She had a large leather briefcase. It looked relatively new. And as she was putting it into the overhead, I just happened to notice that she had a perfect manicure, and she had about 4 to 5 carats of diamonds on her hand. Now, what's scary about this is I was not paying any attention to her as I passed her. Isn't it scary how much your brain takes in when you're not thinking. The list went on and on and on. I had about 45 items in this list when I got done, and I only spent 3 or 4 minutes doing it. I did not spend, we were still on the ground. Okay, we were not 15 minutes into the fight. So clearly for me, it was time to go to step 2 of the process. Step 1 is write down all the clues or cues. Step 2 of the process is then to make up a story. Now this is the fun part. Your brain is doing it anyway, but most of the time we don't notice it. So step 2 is to make up a story about this person based on all the cues. You know it's not true. It's not about trying to figure out what's true. You just make up a story as fast as you can, free association, and I gave myself 5 minutes to look at these cues and then to think about what's her family like? What community does she live in? What's her favorite thing to do? What are her strengths? What are her weaknesses? And I came up after writing with things like this. Well, of course, she's wealthy. She's married. Her spouse, oh, let's make him a professional athlete or an entertainer. Yeah. And she's got 3 kids, college age and high school, and 1 7th grader. They never get to see her, and they resent the fact that she travels all the time because she has them in boarding school. It's, you know, I just made up this great story. And where was she going? She was on her way to spend a month on vacation. At first I thought in Cape Cod, you know, and then I thought, no, maybe she was on her way to southern France. That just sounded more appropriate for what I noticed from her. And after about 5 minutes, I was just getting started. All of these biases, all of these ideas, they were just excited that I was giving them a chance to come out. Like, yes! So after 5 minutes, I stopped and I looked at the story and I said, okay, it really is time to move on to the next step before you get really carried away. So what is step 3 of the process? Step 3 of the process is that then you look at it and you say, with the same stimulus from step 1, no more information, no less, change the story. Change the story, and this time I said, Tracy, change the story to make it a story that would make you like this woman, a story that would make you understand or want to understand her, a story that would make you want to get to know her. And I'll share the new story with you. She recently celebrated her 20th wedding anniversary to a wonderful man. And I gave her a name at this point for some reason, and I named her Jane. Not because she was plain or simple looking, but because she was classic. She had style. She was a Jane, not a Nancy or a Jennifer, and it just seemed to fit. Jane had worked as a model when she was younger, and she loved her job in the retail industry, and so she continued to do that until her children were born, and then she worked part-time until they were all out of primary school. At that point, she started her own company where she developed videos for people, for companies, manufacturers in the retail industry, and now she travels the world training people in stores on the products of the manufacturers she services. What else did I make up about her this time? She had 2 children who loved her dearly and missed her when she traveled, but she called them every evening at a pre-designated time to make sure that the connection was close. Her strengths, she was goal-oriented, calm in the midst of chaos. Her home, about 3,500 square feet, impeccably decorated, but she never paid retail price for anything. Don't you like Jane too? So I really liked Jane after this, and maybe you get the idea. So often we make decisions and we make judgments and we have assumptions going on that drive the way we interact with people. Can you imagine if I had bumped into Jane at baggage claim and her suitcase knocked into my leg? With the first story, or without me even noticing I was having that reaction, I would be more likely to assume she did it on purpose. Who was she? All these negative things. With the second story, I would have assumed she had good intentions. It's all about the story that we make up. It has nothing to do with the other person. Maybe you get the idea. The job for us is to manage our subtle biases. And I'm hoping that you're willing to do that. And that is one of the things that really makes the difference between lip service and the liberating hard talk that creates cross-cultural connections that work for us. I'm hoping that you are one of the people who would be willing to take a coworker who's Muslim to lunch and ask specifically the question, how do people treat you differently since September 11th, 2001? Or maybe you're the person who is willing to bring up an idea in a team meeting that you know people are going to respond to and say things like, well, of course she'd bring that up because of her race or her gender. Or maybe you're the person who is willing to demonstrate not only lip service, but beyond that, liberating hard talk by being able to interview someone for whom English is a second or third language, and you have the ability to separate their accent from their ability. And maybe you're the wonderful person who's able to go from lip service to liberating hard talk by talking to yourself. Are you willing to sit in the quiet of your cubicle or your car and ask yourself the questions about who you have made judgments about and what assumptions you've made, and then step back from that and say, I can do that differently tomorrow?
Do you want inclusion to work in your organization? Then you want Tracy Brown. She's the author of Diagnosis, Diversity, Breaking the Barrier of Bias, and 71 Ways to Demonstrate Your Commitment to Diversity. Tracy can help you achieve clarity, apply courage, and build strong cross-cultural connections. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tracy Brown.
Did you know that one of the biggest mistakes organizations like hospitals have made in recent years is having employees go to diversity training? Now wait, I know some of you are aware that that's what I do for a living. Yes, I'm a consultant. Yes, I do diversity training. And I'm saying that it's a big mistake? Well, yeah, I am. Sometimes when organizations send their employees to diversity training, they set themselves up for failure. And in hospitals especially, I have noticed this pattern over the last 5 or 6 years. Would you like to know 8 of the reasons why hospitals' diversity initiatives tend to fail? Well, let's see. I don't know. Should I tell you? Maybe you can tell me. There are 8 reasons. I bet we've got 8 smart people in the room. What do you think is number 8?
Diversity training focuses on affirmative action and equal employment opportunity recruiting without addressing the many other aspects of diversity.
That's exactly what my number 8 says. Diversity training focuses on affirmative action and EEO recruiting without addressing the many other aspects of diversity. When you do diversity training or you send employees to diversity initiatives and all you do is talk about recruiting, they cannot tell the difference between the affirmative action and EEO initiatives you've had for 20 years and why now you're saying, let's pay attention to diversity. It's a great thing. Let's have inclusion. So that is one of the number 8 reasons that people fail and hospitals fail in their initiatives. What about number 7? Physicians are excluded. That's my number 7 too. I guess you can see there's going to be a pattern here as we go from 8 through 1. Physicians are excluded. And when you don't include physicians, as you talk about managing diversity, responding to multicultural patients, guess what? You have all kinds of problems because physicians are leaders in many ways. They can be barriers if they're not on board. And really, as a hospital, what you're doing is serving those physicians' patients anyway. So one of the things you want to do as you think about doing a diversity initiative is you want to get physician input, you want to look at the physician perspective, and you want to make sure that physicians are included in the leadership and the visibility of your initiative as you go forward. Let's see, number 6.
I know. Diversity activities focus on social aspects that have nothing to do with providing patient care, improving market penetration, or increasing retention and teamwork among staff and physicians.
Yeah, that's a long reason, but it happens all the time. Diversity activities that hospitals start up focus on social aspects. You know what I mean? Like, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. Let's have tacos. Or it's Black History Month. Let's bring in the gospel choir and let's, have a little church. It's cultural and social that it does help people feel good about each other, but it doesn't necessarily make the connection between why I need to understand more about you, your culture, and how that's going to help me with market penetration, increasing revenue, improving customer service, serving patients better, or working more effectively as a team. So we've got number 8, number 7, number 6. Let's hear reason number 5.
I think I know that one. Supervisors and managers are not given the tools or the skills they need to be comfortable and effective with the changing demographics of either the patient population or the workforce.
Absolutely. Diversity initiatives in hospitals have been failing because we focused on the concept that diversity is a good thing. And we have not given the supervisors and managers the tools they need to interact effectively with patients, to understand what their employees need coming from different cultures, and to be leaders in a way that says, isn't inclusion great? Isn't this exciting? Number 4.
Senior leaders don't reward people for taking risks and being champions for diversity.
Senior leaders fail to reward people for taking risks and being champions for diversity, and I just don't know how you got that exactly the same way I do. But as senior leaders, one of the roles that you play is making sure that you highlight what is important for the organization and what it is that you want people to do. So if you tell them to do things, you want to know that if you don't reward them for taking the risk, if you don't reward them for taking a chance and trying something new, then they're not going to do it. And the people who do take the risk feel like they have put themselves in this big spotlight, and they don't know if they're going to get, pats on the back for that, or if they're going to get ignored and criticized. Number 3, what is it?
Number 3, the
The training's too short to impact behavior. Now, I know none of you do this in your organizations, but you know there's this client I was working with about 6 months ago, and they said, Tracy, we know you're really good. We want you to come in and help us get, into the 21st century on this diversity stuff. And I was like, okay, great. Let's talk about what the options are. And they said, well, here's the challenge. We can only release people for 60 minutes. I said, you mean like 60 minutes? Maybe we could do 4 sessions in a row, once a week, and then come back in 3 months? They said, no, only 60 minutes. Whoa. My question to them was, okay, what is it that you really want to achieve? We're not going to bring you all the way into the 21st century, but where are you now? Let's see if we can figure out how to move you a little baby step. If you don't invest as leaders in your organization, if you do not invest in time for people to get the skills and to understand how this relates to their job and to serving patients, then they are not going to be able to apply these great concepts and the organization's commitment to diversity. What's the next one? Number 2.
Number 2, senior leaders set new standards for others, but don't change their own behavior.
Senior leaders set new standards, but don't change their own behavior. Now, you're here at this conference, and I'm sure you're not one of the senior leaders who does that. But in at least 50% of the organizations that I've worked with in the last few years, the senior leader is committed in his or her heart. The senior leader is committed in his or her head. The senior leader will stand in front of a group of people and will say all the right words. But when you look at the senior leader's behavior, he or she has not established new relationships with people they did not know before. The senior leader has not gone around and met people in the organization. The senior leader has not said hello to people